We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to this channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and your friends. And if you want to support this Outpost, Rebel Outpost College Football YouTube channel with a donation, hit the $ when you make a comment, and I'll get you a super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome. Welcome into the studio that sits on the very corner of Keith Jackson Parkway in Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a legend. With your comments in the chat room, with your phone calls later in the show. It is Wednesday, May 23rd, breakfast at PATC. So I hope you're enjoying your breakfast, your cup of coffee, your slices of bacon, your eggs over medium. This show, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? We're talking about this settlement all week. It's all going to be decided probably by today, tomorrow, Friday. Everyone's going to sign on. We know that the Big 12 has signed on to the settlement of the House versus NCAA, and a couple other cases have, they've all enfolded on each other. It's all together now. And we know, so the Big 12 voted. They said, yes, let's go ahead and settle. The ACC last night have voted and they have decided to settle. And we are expecting information, news coming out of the Big Ten and the SEC today. And then it looks like it's going to get wrapped up tomorrow. There is some late legal hurdles that seem to be developing. We're going to hit an article later on today that talks about how, of course, there's pushback on this settlement, and so we're gonna jump into that later on. But the big news, the reason why we're having PATC breakfast, private capital is entering into the college football world. Now, we're using the phrase private capital this morning, not private equity. There's a difference. Maybe, possibly, the article, the report coming out of Ross Dellinger, Yahoo Sports, using the terminology private capital. How much of a difference is there? According to the report, the platform, the firms, the private capital firms are not taking ownership. They're not taking a slice of ownership from your athletic department. You're free to do with the money as you please. Now, we might have some advisors on board in your athletic department, but we're not going to take any ownership, any slice. And if you don't have growth in your athletic department, we're not going to take any of the money back that we gave to you. Does that sound right to you? We only take money back if you've hit a growth spurt in your revenue. Then we'll take some money back. Private capital, is it that much different than private equity when it comes to this situation? You let me know what you think in the comments section in the chat room and with your phone calls later in the show. But irregardless, there's been Cloak and Dagger meetings, Clandestine meetings between the private capital, a certain platform that's being formed by a certain somebody at Florida State, an alumnus at Florida State. They have talked to dozens of athletic directors, a few presidents of universities. They've had discussions with over 50, up to 50 FBS athletic departments, football programs. There is a handful of them. Now, when I read the word handful, I'm thinking 5, 6, up to 10, right? That's a handful. That's what I think handful means. 5, 6, 10 programs, athletic departments that are in deep discussions. Well down the track when it comes to doing this private capital investment in instant infusion of cash. Instant infusion of cash to help these athletic programs deal with all the uncertainty. They deal with the fact that they're going to have to, if they want to compete at the highest level or compete at the highest level that they can possibly compete in, they're going to have to be able to pay these student athletes all the extra cost of paying off this settlement. Everything that is going on in the college football world and the college sports landscape, it's going to take more money. And that instant infusion of cash can help them bridge the gap until there is this belief of this big growth spurt that is going to be coming to the college football world again 5, 6, 7 years from now. That's the belief. Now, I'm going to tell you something. There's a belief out there that the college basketball world is going to have a big time growth in value 5 or 6, 7 years from now. And people believe college football world is going to have this incredible growth in value. So this infusion of cash now to bet on yourself now, the private capital world, people outside of the football world, the private capital world, the private equity world, however you want to describe it, believes that college sports is the great cash cow and it's going to pay off dividends years from now. Is it true? Is it possible? Is it going to happen? People are willing to bet on it. And there seems to be programs out there that are willing to take the money to help them with all the headaches that are going on now. Look, universities do not want to lose the front porch of the university. They want the front porch of the universities to be competitive, to have as much exposure as possible, because it helps recruit regular students to your university. Anytime a program within an athletic department at a university does big time, wins the national championship, competes at the highest level, gets all this exposure, it helps the university as a whole. 50 up to 50 FBS programs. How many of those FBS programs are G5 schools? Probably a lot. How much of them are ACC schools? How much of them are Big 12 schools that are checking into private capital? Is there any Big 10 schools? Is there any SEC schools that are looking at private capital? I don't know. I do not know. I haven't heard of it. Now, we have heard at Peek Around the Corner that Florida State has they've got it all ready to go to pull the trigger. We reported that to you over a month ago. That when it happens, if they need it, it's all set to go. And I think that's pretty clear. There are other programs that are looking like they're setting up to where all they have to do is pull the trigger and the cash is going to be there. To help them get through this time period of enormous increase in expense to compete at the highest level in college sports. But are there any SEC schools that are looking to do this right now? The SEC is about to go into the world of their new media agreement. It's going to start July 1st. It's going to bring a whole lot of cash. I'm seeing tweets out there saying, look, the Big Ten has a bigger payout than the SEC schools, like $7-8 million more. Next year, the Big Ten is going to go way ahead of the SEC. But the year after that, the SEC is going to catch up in more. The SEC is sitting on a growth spurt in which I cannot believe any SEC school would be looking at private capital right now. As for the Big Ten, they're sitting on a new media agreement. It's already been year one of it. You're going to see the numbers explode next year officially. And then they're sitting on a pile of cash that they have. The Big Ten has hundreds of millions of dollars to invest, to do what they want with it. They own it. That's their cash. They've lent out loans to Rutgers and Maryland and Rutgers are paying them back little by little. There's no rush. You would think if an athletic department would need $20 million, $30 million, $50 million, they would just go to their Big Ten bank, the Big Ten Conference. So is there any Big Ten athletic department that is looking at private capital? I guess it's a possibility. We have not heard it. But the ACC schools, we've been hearing about North Carolina once again being in the red yearly. There are other programs, the Big 12, ACC, G5 schools. According to the report this morning, there are up to 50 programs that will have discussions with private capital. Meetings in hotel lobbies, coffee shops, Cloak and Dagger, Cloak and Dagger, Cloak and Dagger. Private capital, private equity is coming to college football. Just another fascinating wrinkle, change in this ever-changing landscape in the sport that we love, college football. So we're going to be hitting it this morning, PATC breakfast. Let me know, do you want your Big 12, ACC school, your Big 10, SEC school? Do you want your Tulane, your New Mexico State to have private capital come into your athletic department and give you an infusion of instant cash to get you over the hump here in the next couple of years? Do you want that to happen? Do you think it can work? Do you think your school that you root for, you cheer for, the school that you go to the sporting events for, the school that you donate to, do you want your school to invest, to have private capital come in? And if you don't, what about those schools that do get the private capital? Let's say your school does not, decides, no, we're not going to do that. But then your rival in your conference, they get private capital in, and suddenly they can out-recruit you, or they have the potential to out-recruit you because they have that infusion of cash, $50 million to $200 million. Those are the numbers we're talking about, according to the report this morning that we're going to go through. What if your rival gets that little bit of edge in the next couple of years? Be able to retain their coaching staff, be able to recruit just at a little bit higher level because they're going to be offering their student athletes a little bit more money than you can. And then what if they start getting success on the football field, on the basketball courts, around the volleyball nets, on the hockey rink, on the cross-country track? If they get a little bit more success than you, and then suddenly you know how that snowballs into more and more success. So before you say no, what if somebody else next to you says yes? What if West Virginia says no, Cincinnati says yes? What if North Carolina says no, but what if North Carolina State says yes? What if Kansas says no, but what if Kansas State says yes? When you start thinking about it in those terms, again, just another fascinating wrinkle that is thrown into this incredible change that is going on in college football and college sports, but we focus on college football on this YouTube channel. So we're going to be hitting the report. It was very important, in my opinion, to do a show this morning when the report came out. Ross Dellinger, Yahoo Sports, private capital is going in, is entering in to the college football world. Holy smokes. First, let me thank everybody who has come on in during our live program. John Teal. Nice to see John back in the PATC chat room. Will Oregon State, Washington State ever get to the ACC? We're not going to know until the ACC implodes. I do think there's a way, way better chance, as you and I have talked about, John. We think there's a way better chance for Oregon State and Washington State to get in the ACC than it is to get into the Big 12. But we do see, overall, we do see a future of Oregon State and Washington State creating a Frankenstein G5 conference, or just picking out the top Mountain West schools to form a new Pac-8 or Pac-10 conference. Washington State and Oregon State. That's where we think we're heading. But there is a chance, you cannot eliminate it, that they could join a new ACC conference after the ACC implosion. Thank you so much for your super chat, John Teal. I do appreciate your generosity once again. Ja Cobra Cat. FBS Eve plucked the forbidden fruit called private capital from the CFB tree of life, corrupting programs like Iowa into the John Deere Hy-Vee Hawkeyes. Wow. That is, first of all, that's a very creative, I love creative comments. FBS Eve, Adam and Eve, plucked the forbidden fruit called private capital, the apple, from the CFB tree of life, corrupting programs like Iowa into John Deere Hy-Vee Hawkeyes. Well, according to the report, and we're going to hit the report right now. According to the report, the private capital, they're not going to take ownership. They're not going to take ownership. They're not going to be really in the decision-making process of what happens in your athletic department. They might send advisors, and you don't need to pay them back unless you make way more money than, till you start making more money. I don't know. It sounds too good to be true. It probably is. But we're going to get in the article. Jacobra Cat, thank you for your super chat, helping us keep the lights on here. College football's peek around the corner. Very interesting and creative comment by Jacobra Cat. FBS Eve plucked the forbidden fruit. And I don't know if Iowa, I don't know. I have not heard. I wouldn't think that Iowa would be particularly interested in this right now. But I could be wrong. Maybe Iowa wants that extra $50, $75, $100 million to get them to be able to compete at the very highest level of the Big Ten. I don't know. Thank you for the super chat, Jacobra Cat. I do appreciate it so very much. Let me thank everybody who has come on in early. Richard L. is in the house. Cameron B., Marcus Williams, Tumasta, Thomas Coker, Christopher Shannon, DP, Stephen McNeely, Kerry Gold Nose, Buckshot Kid, LFG, Bo Weevil, Christopher Shannon, Daniel Montcastle, Drew Weatherford. Very good question by Dan Montcastle. Is Drew Weatherford bound in a conflict of interest because he's calling Florida State to leave the ACC as a board member and also offering capital through his investment firm to the same university? I don't believe Drew Weatherford's investment firm, his platform that he's creating, is the one that is going to be working with Florida State. We have a name that there's one of these things that we cannot go forward with. We don't think Drew Weatherford is involved in Florida State's the firm that Florida State is dealing with. So we don't think there would be a conflict of interest. Carrie knows it's called capitalism. Immaculate is in the house. Ray Division is in the house. David Kreitzer is here. Rock and Rant. Holy smokes. I know I missed a bunch of people who have come on in, so I want to say thank you to everybody who's come on in at the beginning of PATC Breakfast. Don't need to pay them back. Are these just booster groups willing to lose money to support their favorite schools? According to the report, and we're going to get into it right now. Oh, they want their money back. They want their money back. But according to the, and more, right? It's like they're buying a stock. But according to the report, you know, if the athletic department doesn't make more money, doesn't hit their projections going forward, you don't need to pay us back. I don't know. It sounds too good to be true, but let's get into it. Laura Weiss, thanks for coming on in. PA No Fan, thanks for coming on in. Everybody, thank you for coming on in at the beginning of PATC Breakfast. Ross Dellinger, Yahoo Sports, this morning. With college sports at a critical juncture, private equity groups pushing for their peace. For a year now, Drew Weatherford has worked in the shadows across college athletics. He's held Clandestine, Cloak, and Dagger meetings with representatives from upwards of the 50 football bowl subdivision programs. Dozens of athletic directors. Now, how many of those athletic directors are in the ACC? A few university presidents, even some school board members and chief financial officers. There were phone calls from his office, Zoom chats in hotel lobbies, in-person Cloak and Dagger gatherings at coffee shops. Now, some of this is first-party talks. Some of this is third-party talks. In the hotel lobbies are the place for many third-party talks when it comes to schools and conferences talking with each other. Airport lobbies, hotel lobbies, just to give you a little peek around the corner, a peek behind the curtain. Hotel lobbies are used all the time. Most of them unfold in similar fashion. Gregarious and charming with a sweeping white smile, Weatherford, the former Florida State quarterback turned private capital investor, presents a slide deck detailing a project that he and co-partner Jerry Cardinal of Redbird Capital Partners launched last year. Redbird Capital is not the name that we have been told at Peek Around the Corner that is all ready to go with Florida State. Nothing's been signed, at least we've been told, but it does get signed the moment, and maybe it happens right after the settlement here. So keep your eye on Florida State, and probably a few other schools, but keep your eye on Florida State once the settlement becomes official. Their goal is quite simple. Infuse instant cash, the greenbacks, into major college athletic departments. No school has said, nah, that is not something we would consider, Weatherford said. In one of the most consequential weeks in college athletics history, with leaders on the brink of approving a landmark antitrust case settlement and adopting a new revenue sharing model with athletes, Weatherford is speaking publicly about his exploits for the first time in 2 separate meetings with Yahoo Sports. Weatherford revealed and then explained the presentation that he showed administrators and university personnel over the last 10 to 12 months. Weatherford Capital and Redbird Capital Partners have combined their powers and billions in cash to create collegiate athletics solutions, a dedicated campaign and business building platform for investing capital in college athletic departments at the most transformational time in the industry. Collegiate Athletic Solution. That's the name. I had a hunch this revenue sharing thing was real, and it's going to be another big blow to athletic departments, Weatherford said. College administrators are bracing for the new reality of sharing revenue directly with athletes as part of the terms of the House Settlement Agreement. While the NCAA and the schools will pay $2.8 billion in back damages, they've also agreed to a future player revenue sharing model with a quasi-salary cap as much as $22 million annually per school. Most power conference leaders are expecting to spend as much as $30 million in new revenue annually when considering the revenue sharing cap plus a reduction in NCAA distribution for back damages and the addition of new scholarships and a model that to some degree removes financial aid limitations. That's $300 million in new money over the duration of the 10-year settlement term. It's why over the last 2 weeks, especially, Weatherford's phone has buzzed more than normal. In a timely move last week, Redbird Capital added $4.7 billion to its arsenal for new endeavors, according to the Wall Street Journal, putting the firm at what is believed to be $10 billion in equity. How much of that is going in to this new athletic collegiate platform to invest in these athletic departments? I do not know. But they're getting ready. The phone call's been buzzing, and as we get in more into the article, it sounds like some deals are going to be struck. Here it is, right here. As part of the Collegiate Athletic Solutions platform, Weatherford and Cardinal are seeking 5 to 10 programs to invest in as little as $50 million and as much as $200 million. They are in deep conversations with a handful of programs, though Weatherford declined to identify or discuss specific schools. $50 million to as much as $200 million. They're seeking 5 to 10 programs, probably in their first wave of investment. Deep conversations. Who are those 5 to 10 programs? Who do you believe are those 5 to 10 programs? Are we looking at, now if you're looking at $50 million to $200 million, to me that $50 million is quite high. I almost want to say there's no G5 schools, FBS program G5 schools, that are willing to go $50 million. Not in this first wave, not in this early time period. So I'm looking at Big 12 schools. I'm looking at ACC schools that are talking to Weatherford. That's how I'm speculating it. 5 to 10 programs, as little as $50 million, as much as $200 million. At least 3 power conference school athletic directors confirmed to Yahoo Sports that they have spoken deeply with Weatherford about a partnership. They declined to reveal their identity as the deals have not been finalized. Again, obviously, no one's going to finalize a deal when it comes. Look, when this settlement becomes official, okay, now, right? When the revenue sharing plan, when all this becomes official, I think some of these deals are going to become official. Now, it says at least 3 power conference schools athletic directors confirmed to Yahoo Sports. There are probably others. Obviously, there's others. But Yahoo Sports is saying at least 3 of them confirmed, are willing to confirm to Yahoo Sports that they have spoken deeply. In other words, they're deep conversations. Everything, probably everything's being done. It's probably ready to go. Again, this is why we have to have this PATC meeting, this meeting today with the PATC community, this live show, because everything's about to burst open. This settlement's about to become official. Again, yesterday during the live show, I said to you, even I, who talks about this every single day, who've been talking about this since August 10th of 2022, when we said in our manifesto that these student athletes need to and will be paid directly from the schools in this new world, and that's the straw that is stirring the drink, even I am having a difficult time grasping this huge change. I'm having a hard time grasping it. And this is just one aspect, a huge aspect. Private capital coming into college football, coming into college sports. It is, we are riding a wave of change, and the waves are just blowing us over, throwing us around. We got to talk about this now because we could be getting breaking news on private capital deals 2 days from now, 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now. And when it happens, it's going to be a big deal. And it's going to happen out in the open unless it's a private institution. But if it's a public institution, we're going to see it. People are going to be betting on this, gambling on this. Some aren't. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Crazy time of change. If you want to compete at this level, get this. If you want to compete at this level, private equity and capital is really important, one athletic director said. I've been talking to these people for 10 to 12 months. I haven't pulled the trigger. But is this what you are going to need to be successful and survive? Yes, it is. Obviously, that athletic director is going to pull the trigger. Obviously, that athletic director have had discussions with the university president. Obviously, it seems to me that everything is lined up to pull the trigger. You've got athletic directors willing to talk to Ross Dellinger and Yahoo Sports. They're confirming what Drew Weatherford is telling Yahoo Sports. So this is not a shot in the dark that Drew Weatherford is talking about. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. How deep, how big is that first wave of private capital coming into college football? I don't know. It sounds like that this platform looks like it's about to strike a deal with 5 to 10 athletic departments right off the bat. In fact, Redbird acquired Italian soccer giant AC Milan for $1.3 billion in 2022 and has stakes in Formula One's Alpine and the Fenway Sports Group, owners of the Boston Red Sox, English soccer team Liverpool. Redbird's independent content studio, Everwonder, is operating the new in-season 8-team men's college basketball tournament in Las Vegas over the Thanksgiving weekend. The tournament is expected to pay participating teams up to $2 million in NIL deals. Now, is that a clue? Is that a clue? Somebody in the chat, somebody in the PATC community, put down the names once again of those 8 college basketball teams that are going to be in that Las Vegas tournament over the Thanksgiving weekend that are going to getting paid in NIL deals. All of that owned by Redbird. Is that a clue? Is some of those 8 schools, are they ready to pull the trigger with Redbird because they're part of this group? These ventures aren't completely rare in the world of higher education either, but in college athletics, it has been wholly unusual. The words private and equity together spook some. Many scowl at the thought of athletic departments, originally meant to be university nonprofit marketing and entertainment entity, giving away control of a portion of itself for fast cash. Weatherford describes collegiate athletic solutions as private capital, not equity. There is no ownership here, he says. Schools have the freedom to be flexible with the $50 million to $200 million lump sum, he says. It is meant to be spent with existing other capitals, thinking traditional debt, booster donations, and bonds to offset expenses such as athletic revenue sharing, coaches' salaries, and facility improvement, he says. But the freedom is theirs, he says. Weatherford. Not private capital. It's private capital, not equity. There's no ownership. You can use that money, that $50 million to $200 million, free to use it as you choose. The CAS project does not require a management role inside the athletic department, as private equity often does, he said. Though they would aim to be advisors to presidents and athletic directors in managing revenue growth. After all, they do have an incentive to see increases in department revenue. They would earn CAS, Collegiate Athletic, this new platform. They earn a percentage on any new annual growth. Over a 10 to 20 year period, that percentage decreases from perhaps 22% in the first few years to 2% by its end, as the firm meets its original principal investment. Weatherford describes this as taking a revenue royalty. If there is no growth, the firm does not take a cut. Okay. They are not mandated. They are not mandated to pay us back the money we give them, Weatherford said, if there is not growth. These capital firms are built around investing wisely in revenue-generating entities. Why take a risk on an unstable situation in college sports if you aren't guaranteed a profit? I deeply personally believe in college athletics, Weatherford said. As an ex-athlete, I owe a lot to it, and so does my family. We believe in college athletics. I don't like the fact that 10 to 15 teams have a chance to win a national title every year. I'd like that to be 40 to 50. It's not a level playing field. Not everyone has the resources to compete. New revenue streams are important than ever for college athletic departments. Through the years, have saved little to no money in reserves. Most athletic departments use profit from their one true revenue-generating sport, football, to subsidize the rest of the department. That means funding money losed in Olympic sports and paying for football expenses. Over the years, fueled by multi-million-dollar television contracts, athletic departments at the highest level became flush with cash, unable to directly compensate athletes situated in a competitive environment. Departments pumped the excess cash into gaudy facility projects and million-dollar coaching and administrative salaries in an effort to compete with the rivals on the recruiting trail. This result, many schools are hampered with significant debt that continues to expand as the arms race for facility upgrades and coaching salaries plods onward until perhaps now. Schools will be permitted, not required, to pay athletes directly. The facility's arms race is quickly evolving into one solely focused on compensating athletes. And that is why Oklahoma and Texas left the Big 12 when they had the opportunity. That is why USC left the Pac-12 when they had its opportunity. This is why Brett Yormark wanted the Big 12 to be more of a national conference and to go after and poach the Pac-12 to give the Big 12 every chance, every opportunity possible to successfully poach the Pac-12. The sole focus on compensating athletes, that is the straw that is stirring the drink in college sports. Every school that I talk to says they have to max out on revenue sharing or they are no longer going to be competitive and run the risk of being regulated out of the conference, Weatherford said. Now, we got a few more pages to go through in this article, but we're going to take a pause here. I'm going to take a drink of water out of my Cloak and Dagger mug. Okay? I want to touch upon something. Did you hear or did you read what I just read? I don't know what to think. Look, this is college football's peak around the corner. I'm supposed to provide answers. I'm supposed to provide a peek around the corner for you all. It's a what have you done lately kind of world. But what I'm about to bring up, I have no peek. I don't know what this is. I'm not talking about the private capital here. I'm talking about what Weatherford just said. Did you hear what Weatherford just said? Let's go back. Thank you, Kerry Goldnose. I do appreciate your super chat. Thank you for your continued generosity, Mr. Seminole. Appreciate it. Did any of you pick up what I just read on the last page? And again, we're gonna take a moment. We're gonna take a moment. We'll finish up this article. But I gotta get your perspective, your thoughts on what Weatherford just said in this article. I'm going to say it again. Every school that I talk to says they have to max out on revenue sharing or they are no longer going to be competitive and run the risk of being regulated out of their conference. Now, look, Weatherford's a smart guy, right? 2 days in meeting. We're going to pause here. We need to talk about this. We need to talk about this part. One of the big reasons why we have to do this PATC breakfast show. Every school that I talk to says they have to max out on revenue sharing or they're no longer going to be competitive and run the risk of being regulated out of the conference. What does that mean? I can only, this is my speculation. Again, I cannot provide you the peek around the corner at this time on this. I'm going to offer up a speculation. Are there schools in the SEC, in the Big Ten, in the ACC, in the Big 12, in the AAC, in the Mountain West? I don't know. You name it. Are there schools? Everybody that Weatherford has talked to, every school that I've talked to says they're going to run the risk of being regulated if they don't max out on the revenue sharing. Is there conferences? Is there commissioners? Are the commissioners of these conferences saying to the school's athletic departments, look, when this is set at 20 million, 22 million, you have got to spend every nickel of it. Now, it might be in writing. It might be in writing that this is permissive, that you don't need to spend all of it. But if you don't spend all of it, if you don't spend every drop of the 20, 22 million, this fluctuating salary cap number, if you don't do that on revenue sharing to your student athletes, you run the risk of getting kicked out of your conference. Is that what we're talking about here? I cannot wait to hear your phone calls. Is that what we're talking about here? Like, they are talking, these schools are motivated. Weatherford is telling you. And there is some credibility here. He's going to strike some deals here. It looks like he's going to. I mean, Yahoo Sports has gotten confirmation from athletic directors telling Yahoo Sports. So this isn't Weatherford just talking out of his you-know-what. Every school that I talk to say they have to max out in revenue sharing. Now, yeah, if you want to compete for the top recruits, if you want to be in the recruiting game, you're gonna have to get involved in this revenue sharing. But he's not just talking about being competitive. He's talking about they have to max out on the revenue sharing or they no longer going to be competitive and they're going to run the risk of being regulated out of their conference. So if UCF doesn't do the whole revenue sharing, max out, if West Virginia, Cincinnati, TCU, Texas Tech, North Carolina, Purdue, Illinois, Rutgers, Minnesota, everybody, Weatherford actually used the term regulated. Every school that I talk to says They have to max out on revenue sharing or they are no longer going to be competitive. Okay, we can understand that. And run the risk of being regulated out of their conference. Rutherford said they need to generate more revenue. And the truth is, a lot of their access to capital is strained. They've raised a lot of their debt for facilities. They've taken on debt, raised gobs of money from their donors to build the facilities. I'm not going to say that there's no more room left, but they're getting to the brink of being exhausted. That we can confirm. That's true, Mackett. Relegated out of the conference. Run the risk of being relegated. But many still question the need for private equity or capital within college sports. University board members and school presidents, while warming to the idea, are naturally hesitant. So too are the most powerful leaders in the sport. This is another clue. Yeah, relegated. You're right. Relegated. This is another important clue. What could private equity do that schools can't with their donors? Asking outgoing American Athletic Commissioner Mike Oresco. Another question. Does private equity align with your goals? I question its role in college athletic departments. Mike Oresco is retiring. Now, listen to this. In an interview last month, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey brushed aside private equity is a savior of sorts for the industry. An insinuation. Brushed aside an insinuation that private equity is a savior of sorts for the industry. If you use the cliche, if I was buying stock, I'd buy stock in college sports. Well, apparently there's a lot of people who believe outside of college sports, he said, something is going right. However, the impending revenue sharing model has administrators searching for cash. The new model is expected to take effect starting next academic year in the fall of 2025. 14 months to come up with the upwards of $30 million isn't easy. For those in the Big Ten and the SEC, the task isn't as difficult. Over the next few years, more than $25 million in television and college football playoff monies are on the way for each of those members. In the ACC and the Big 12, things are more tricky. In fact, one ACC school may be further along than others in the hunt for private money. Florida State Athletic Director Michael Alford are believed to be seriously exploring such a path, with a multi-million dollars in figures emerging from public records obtained by Sportico and the Tampa Bay Times. While Weatherford sits on the Florida State Board of Trustees, he's not involved with the Seminoles' private equity venture, he said. However, perhaps in the not-too-distant future, CAS, Collegiate Athletic Solutions, or some other entity will cut a giant check to an athletic department near you. It's basically like going and taking out a loan and repaying it over 15 to 20 years, said another Power Conference athletic director. Here's the thing. How desperate are you? Because you've got to pay off that note. You're right, guys. Relegate. Wow. So, before we get to your phone calls, What do you think? How many athletic programs, athletic departments are going to actually do this? Private capital. Drew Weatherford, CAS, they're in deep discussions with 5 to 10 handful of programs, athletic departments, between $50 million and $200 million in instant cash infusion. Supposedly, the athletic departments are going to be free to spend that money how they deem to spend the money. It's their decisions. They have the freedom to spend it how they want to spend it. And the private capital, supposedly, CAS will not take a percentage of ownership from the athletic department. And they'll get paid when there is a growth in revenue from the athletic department. Do you want your school to take advantage of private capital? Do you think your school will take advantage of private capital? Do you think schools in your conference will take advantage? Or I shouldn't say take advantage. Will they take the opportunity of having private capital come on in to their athletic department? Do you think the Big Ten and the SEC, any schools will be doing this? Or is there new media deals they're going to be able to get through this hump of higher expenses to compete at the highest level? Are they going to be fine, the Big Ten and the SEC schools? Is this primarily a Big 12, ACC, G5 situation? $50 million is a lot of money. And according to this article, this report, confirmed by athletic directors and at least 3 power conferences athletic directors, at least 3 of them have had deep conversations with Weatherford. It sounds like to me that we're going to be listening, we're going to be hearing, we're going to be reading of reports coming out soon of some Big 12 and some ACC schools getting involved with private capital. An infusion of instant cash so they can max out on the salary cap, so they can make sure they can recruit, that they have the resources to offer student athletes the money needed to be able to recruit classes, to be able to compete at the highest level. I'm going to open up the phone lines. A remarkable morning. Private capital, private equity, you can call it what you want to call it, is arriving in college football. The line is now open. 763-260-1333. 763-260-1333. Relegated. Thank you, Cameron B. Rock Chalk. I appreciate it. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you so very much. So relegated to the back of the pack of your conference if you don't max out on the recruiting. I guess that's what that meant. It makes more sense to me. John Wilner is reporting. John Wilner is reporting. John Wilner is reporting. Pac-12 presidents, all 12, are expected to approve the House case with a vote likely tomorrow, Thursday. So we got the Big 12, we got the ACC, Pac-12 is about to vote it in.
Call from
Immaculate.
Mr. Hawkeye Immaculate is on the line. The floor is yours.
Hey, Greg. Good morning. How are we doing?
Doing good.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to make it come across like it was jumping you on that. It's just in terms of people weren't reading along with you, they might think that there were some regulations forcing.
Yeah.
Folks,
Well, I read it incorrectly, so I do appreciate you jumping on it.
Yeah, because there does sound like there is something like that. Like, these percentages. You have to spend at least 22%.
Yeah.
But it kind of sounds like what he's saying is there might be some schools within a conference that maybe spends higher to try to reach the cap. Say, like we talked about the Big 12. They might have a lower 22% that they have to pay than, say, what the Big 10 does. So some of those schools might want to think that they need to compete directly with Big 10, so they spend the same amount as the Big 10 does. If other schools are then not doing that, or say like the majority of them do, they might look at one that doesn't. And when he says relegated, we're talking about like relegation.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with like European leagues, folks who, programs fall down a league. Well, the comparison here would be basically you might be voted out of the league. You might be voted out of the conference if you're not keeping up and spending what maybe the majority of everyone else is, or if you're way below. So that was kind of interesting to see a Florida State Board of Trustees member use that kind of language.
Yeah.
I think that's a shot at the ACC because there's vast differences in the ACC between what the capabilities of these schools are to do this. Not to harp on, but that's kind of what I'm talking about, the differences between publics and privates and what they can do, what they can possibly do. I don't know. It was interesting to see. I think it may be a little hyperbole, maybe just a little overplayed, but it's possible. It's possible if a school just can't keep up, if they aren't in that age. I mean, Florida State's been griping about that in the ACC for a long time.
Yeah.
That a bunch of those programs just are not spending at their level, are not trying to be competitive on the level, and that's causing the entire ACC to be seen in a certain light, which is why they didn't get in, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to go too much in that direction, but it's interesting to see come from him say that, is that, could we see that in the future with this type of a system? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure what Weatherford was saying there. Does he mean like if a school
removed from a conference?
What was that?
I'm pretty sure he means removed from a conference.
Does he mean removed from a conference, or I'm going to put it up on the screen here,
like a Super League type of thing?
No. Okay, I'm going to read what he said here. Every school that I talk to says they have to max out on revenue sharing, or they're no longer going to be competitive. And I understand, it's going to be more difficult and run the risk of being relegated out of their conference.
Mm-hmm.
He says out of their conference. Like,
yes.
When I first read it, I'm thinking, okay, what he means is if you're not able to compete at the highest level.
Yeah, you'd be gone. And now it comes down to, is he alluding to basically there being a vote to remove a school, or is he inferring that there'll be some kind of higher power over the conferences that then is trying to redesign, like this school goes up to this conference, this school goes down to that conference? I don't necessarily believe in that at this point in time, that the commissioners would give someone else that much power over them, especially not like the Big Ten with, their situation.
Yeah. When I first read it, Immaculate, as you know, I'm not very bright. I read it, and I'm thinking, this is early in the morning. I'm thinking, if a school doesn't pay up to the maximum, along with their peers, they're going to get pushed back to the back of the conference in terms of competition.
Yeah.
So I read this a couple times thinking, yeah, well, it's, if the Minnesota Golden Gophers, okay, we're probably not going to pay as much money on our basketball program, just because there's going to be incredible internal pressure to take some of that 22 million, whatever that money is, to put it in the hockey programs. It's just the way it is up here.
100%.
So our basketball program is going to get pushed to the back of the conference, like it is now, like it has been. Okay,
yeah.
but Rutherford says relegated out of their conference. So again, so it's not so permissive. Like every school that I talk to, he says they have to max out, and whatever that number is for revenue sharing, their commissioner must be saying to them, some, like you say, how higher power. It must be the commissioner, or maybe that higher power, Immaculate, is the media partner. Like you've got to invest everything possible at the highest level, or there's something in the contract says that you're going to get removed from the conference. I don't know, man.
But there is a cap though, and so I would say, using the Minnesota thing here, I mean, if Minnesota is spending up at that cap, which they can, I don't think Minnesota is not going to be able to spend as much. I mean, because of the cap. I mean, if there was no cap, then that might be a problem for Minnesota. But Minnesota's going to be able to spend at that cap.
Sure.
But yeah, they might not allocate it the same as others. So,
sure.
And I don't think the conference needs that. I don't think the conference needs Minnesota to spend as much on basketball, because as much as fans may not pay as much attention to hockey as basketball, like overall generally.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously in Minnesota they do.
Yeah.
But for the conference, that matters. So if you're carrying the load for the conference in hockey and not as competitive in basketball, well, okay, so what? That's just a win for those other teams in basketball. But you're doing your part. And, and then obviously in football you're spending too.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we're going to see, is like this natural. We've already seen it pretty much, where it's hard for a school to be both a football and a basketball power.
Yeah.
I think that this is just going to codify that.
Yeah.
Like your role in the conference is going to be where you decide to put this money. It's always going to be in football. You've got to spend in football because that's 80%. Maybe 70% in the future. But I'm going to be interested, if private equity comes in, will they find a way to make, say, hockey more profitable? Will they find a way to make baseball more profitable? I don't know. That's their job. They want to come in and be advisors on how to better make money. Well, those are the type of sports, to me. Like, if you can actually start to make money, that might be where people aren't thinking right now. But as investors coming in and looking in areas, where can we help them make money so that we get money back on our investment? I think in a lot of ways like that. So if they do, say, find a way to make money on hockey in the Big Ten, Minnesota's not going anywhere, right? Because you're carrying the load.
No, okay, but let me give you an example. Let's just pretend. I'm gonna just throw a pretend scenario out there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I want to take a public university though. Okay, let's take Pittsburgh. Okay, now we're just using Pittsburgh. Well, they're kind of quasi-private public.
Yeah, they're at about 11%. Public spending of they're a public school because they take public money, but yeah, they like to think of themselves as like a private, but they're not.
Let's just take Pittsburgh. It don't matter. I'm throwing out a school. I'm not saying anything negative about this school. We're just going to use Pittsburgh as an example. Okay, so Pittsburgh, for whatever reason, put out the number, Immaculate. What is that number going to be? What is going to be the maximum salary cap for an ACC school?
Well, I think the maximum
is going to be 22 million.
Is going to be the same across the board per conference. What'll be different is what that 22% is and what they have to spend.
Yes. Okay.
So the difference. So that's why I say, like in a conference like the Big Ten, it's going to matter less because that's pretty much going to be the same thing. Whereas in the ACC, there's going to be a difference.
Okay, but we're just going to use the $20 million figure. Let's say it fluctuated up to 27. ACC's at $20 million. Pittsburgh, for whatever reason, is not able to spend at the maximum level that the ACC wants them to spend at. Okay?
Okay.
Donor money is not coming in. Ticket sales are not coming in. They do have a pretty low athletic department money anyways. And for whatever reason, internally, the University of Pittsburgh decides not to delve in private capital. For whatever reason.
Okay.
Is there a chance, because they're not reaching the number, whatever number the ACC wants them to reach when it comes to revenue sharing, is there a chance that there's that the ACC would kick out a University of Pittsburgh? Or is there a chance that ESPN would say, hey, Pittsburgh is not, however that would work. Let's just take the media partner out of it for now. Is there a chance the ACC would say they would vote on kicking Pittsburgh out because they're not investing the money that everybody else is in the ACC?
Under these specific circumstances, I don't want anyone to listen to this and think, oh, he's saying they're going to kick out Pitt. But under these specific circumstances, is it possible, which, 1% to 100% chance, I guess I'd have to say yes.
Yeah.
Now, would I say that that's a high chance? I don't know. I think we need to see the settlement. We need to see these numbers. We need to know if there's a lot of variables still left in this that are coming to us here soon.
Sure.
But based just upon what we've just heard and the circumstances you put out here, I think we have to say that this is a potential possibility in the future with this new system we're about to have. In order to say for sure, we need to actually see what the new system is. I mean, we're getting a new governance model. We're getting a whole lot coming in. So it's really hard to try to figure out the balance of this right now. But I actually think this might be more scary. I mean, this is detriment, but the further down you go in the conference hierarchy. Because the difference between that max payout, whatever cap is set by the settlement and maybe legislation that comes, and that percentage of revenue coming in, it's going to get larger and larger the farther down we go in that hierarchy.
Yeah.
So, if we're really looking for higher potential possibilities in what you're saying, I would probably go down much farther than the ACC. Yeah. I would start looking in like some of the conferences in the G5. I don't want to name or go into it because it's just so amorphous right now. But that's where I'm looking at and going, oof, this. When they say relegated, they might mean like out of the FBS, out of the division. And so to me, that's more like G5 schools.
Yeah. Wow. I think there's a lot more to this. See, again, and this is what I said yesterday. I'm not able to grasp we don't know what we don't know, right? I mean,
Right.
the ramifications could be never ending here. So we're just going to try to hang on. We're going to try to report what we know, what the reports that come out. Big time report this morning. Private capital is moving into college football. I don't think Drew when I was reading this report for the first time, Immaculate, and I saw that Yahoo Sports, Ross Dellinger had all these sources from athletic directors, power conference athletic directors, at least 3 of them having deep conversations with Drew Weatherford. This is all real. This is not just Drew Weatherford trying to bring on more business, getting out there, exposure, whatever. He's got a handful of these schools on the hook, ready to pull the trigger once all this stuff becomes official. Am I crazy in thinking that?
No, and in fact, from what you were showing there, I don't even think his firm is even the big player in this.
Yeah.
From what you were saying about Redbird, that's a big player. That's something you can look at their history and say, oh, okay, they're coming in. And, you could look at a team like in English Premier League football with Manchester City. They were hanging around in that league for the longest time. And then a major private investor came in, took over, and now they've just won 3 or 4 in a row or something like that.
Yeah.
So, when you have examples like that and groups that are involved with that and saying, look, we know how to help make you successful, that's going to be a very strong presentation for some of these folks to look at that and go, they've got results.
Yes. It's the prisoner dilemma, man. It's the prisoner dilemma. You're sitting here and you're going, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take that.
But are they going to do it?
But the guy next to me is going to do that. Now I'm screwed because that guy next to me, the value of his lacrosse program, his football program is going up. It's a snowball effect. You know how that is. And when you're down in the hole, it's hard to get out of if you're in the back of whatever sport you're trying to compete in. Oh man, yeah.
There's some big real life examples of people tend to look at this in certain ways, and that's valid. That's warranted. But there's also examples like I say Manchester City of where they came in and just completely changed the trajectory of that.
Yes.
Club. So we'll see how it goes, man.
All right.
I don't know. I just want to say, like I said, if we're really looking at who might be affected by this, remember the governance model is changing with this as well. And I think that's the autonomous conferences. And if they're setting rules for the entire FBS, that's going to be a big story. I'll just leave it at Have yourself a good one, buddy. Really appreciate it. Talk to you later.
Got it. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Great call by Mr. Hot Guy. Kerry Gold Nose, thank you for the super chat. Thank you, Mr. Seminole. I don't quite understand the comment, however. Maybe cut back up to 50% of revenue sharing. I don't know what you mean by that. I don't know what you mean. Some schools are going to do 50% of their salary cap. Potentially, yes. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I do appreciate the super chat, Kerry Go Knows. Please explain it back into the comment section and we can have a talk about it, or give me a call at 763-260-1333. I do appreciate, again, the contributions that you make to us. Kerry Gold knows that I don't quite understand the super chat.
Call from
JD.
JD, Mr. Seminole is on the line. The floor is yours.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing just peachy. I wanted to call. I wasn't calling from the FSU perspective necessarily on this, just generally sticking on topic here. With this new settlement and revenue sharing and all that comes with it, there are, well, let's just say this. There's a bill that's due every year for every one of these institutions. Mm-hmm. And their competitors have to pay the bill as well.
Yes, sir.
If you're not maximizing your roster, being as competitive, marketing your university, if you're not doing the things that you need to be doing, you're not helping the conference and you're not helping your other members of the conference. You know, I really enjoyed your phone call a minute ago with you and Immaculate, and there was some things that he was alluding to. He was a little kinder than I am. Syracuse, Boston College, other universities have been just cashing checks for years. They have. They have not been investing in their programs. Sure, they might have a good couple of years, or they might have a sport or two, but they have not been investing at the level as other universities. You can look at the statistics from the last 10 years or so, and you can see what athletic departments are spending. They're not up to standard.
Well, Boston College has so many more sports that they sponsor than other ACC athletic departments. So that's one of the... They valued having a whole bunch of sports, much like North Carolina. But go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
A lot of these universities don't monetize their athletic departments like their competitors. You know, you go to Boston College, you can't tailgate, you can't do anything there. I think that I've never been up there, but it's almost like it's in the middle of a neighborhood. Games, visitors, visiting teams often bring more fans to the game than what Boston College does. You've got so many dynamics around, and I think that's one thing that private equity, when they say per se, I'm not going to demand you make this payment back, because you're selling them a piece of a percentage of your future profits, your future earnings. Mm-hmm. So these universities now, if they want to stay in a league, they have to pay the bill and they have to contribute to the success of the conference. Otherwise, what are you doing here? So now that they've signed on to this settlement and they've more or less agreed to the mortgage, let's just say, there's certain obligations you're going to have to fulfill. And it can't be business as usual from the past. There's certain benchmarks that must be put in place. It has to be. I mean, the conferences are agreeing to pay it, and they're not going to pay out. If you have, let's just say the Big 12 and half the conference decides they're just going to coast, that's not going to fly. And I'm sure there, as what y'all were alluding to, I'm sure there's a certain percentage mandated that you must spend on revenue sharing, because they have to mandate you be competitive. I think, doesn't the NFL have a minimum that you must spend on? Yep. They have a low bar, and I'm sure it's going to be that way. And I've heard so many people talk about, you know, commentators throughout the industry suggest that college sports, especially college football, has so much unrealized revenue potential. It's staggering. That's why it's in the best interest of these private equity firms to get involved, to get in early and say, and I'm just throwing out, you know, guesstimations here, but let's just say, all right, you've got this loan here, whether it's, you know, whether you use it all, you have access to whatever, but you're selling us 5%, or you're selling us 10% of, let's say, your merchandising or ticket revenues or whatever else. I don't know. I mean, I know there's some scenarios where it would almost become usurious, but hopefully it really is just the private equity realizing, okay, we invest $2 billion over the next 3 or 4 years, but we double or triple our money over the next 10 or 12. And I think there's that much out there. There's so many college football fans that are so casual. Look at FSU. You know, one of the reasons they were pigeonholed in and bullied by the ACC back in 2016, 17, 18, somewhere around there, where, you know, Swofford came in and more or less threatened FSU that they better sign the 2016 grant of rights. Otherwise, there could be stiff repercussions if they didn't. And at that time, FSU wasn't a candidate for the SEC or the Big Ten. And they didn't want to go to the Big 12. Mm-hmm. The presidents in previous years didn't want to go to the Big 12. They had a chance. I think the Big 12 would have taken them. But they didn't, you know, at that time, the president, I think Eric Barron was the president at that time, but he didn't want to go to the Big 12. And so I guess he kind of looked down on the Big 12 at the time. So there were certain scenarios where they just financially couldn't foot the $100 to $120 million bill to get kicked out of the ACC, because there's rumors that he was threatening them expulsion of the league if they didn't sign on to the grant of rights then. So maybe we'll find out about all that. Maybe there'll be depositions. I doubt it, but I would love to get the background on that. But yeah. The point is that, you know, FSU had to modernize their athletic department, had to modernize their booster organizations, and now they're one of the healthiest in college football. Their collective is one of the best. It's the one of the top 3 or 4 collectives in the industry. Their booster, Seminole Boosters, is growing exponentially. If so many of these other universities do the same thing, just, you know, monetize what you're good at. And
yeah, but there's, you know, most athletic departments are not going to be able to do what Florida State does, though, right?
Sure.
I mean, they don't have the fan base. They don't have the history. They don't have the demographics. They just don't have it. They're not going to have it. They could do everything right for the next 30 years, and they're not going to be Florida State. So, you know, we haven't got a report yet about a floor, you know, a certain floor that they have to spend on when it comes to like the major revenue, like football. That's going to be interesting to see. I don't even know if every school in the same conference is going to be required to have the same salary cap. It is so kind of, we've gotten a lot of reports on this, JD, but we haven't gotten like concrete reporting on what this is going to look like. I'm still confused exactly what this salary cap is going to look like. Is it going to be exactly the same for Florida State as it is for Rutgers? The same Florida State as it is for Boston College? What, you know, we don't know. But man, I hope we hear exactly what this looks like by the end of the week.
Well, everything that you're reading the last couple of days is just the slow rollout. You know, they don't. It's just a little at a time. You can't overwhelm people, and or they're just not releasing everything,
or they don't know. It hasn't
or
been
they don't want
to. I don't know.
Or there's going to be things we're not really excited about, and they want to reduce the possibility of any lawsuits or injunctions trying to be filed to prevent the vote.
Yeah.
You remember back when Obamacare and everything else, and I'm not going to get all political, but I remember what was Pelosi was saying, we have to pass the bill before we could find out what's in it, and I'm paraphrasing. You know, there's some things that are good and some things that are not, and they don't want you to know what's detrimental until it's already done because they want to make sure it gets passed. Congress does that all the time, and so there's positive aspects that could potentially save all these universities millions upon billions collectively, but there's a downside. There's downsides, and there's downsides that we don't know, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
But anyway, I wanted to chime in on this. That was just my opinion.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the time, and you allow me to call in. Okay?
You got it. I appreciate the call, JD. Great call, man.
Hey.
Mr. Seminole.
Have a great day. Thank you. All right, bye-bye.
A lot of reporting out this morning on the Ross Dellinger, Drew Weatherford published article this morning.
Call from
Chris Kenny.
Chris Kenny, the floor is yours.
Hey, Greg, how are you?
I'm doing good, sir. How are you doing?
Good. So I've got a couple of points. You get like hundreds of calls, so if not thousands of calls at this point, so you don't remember this, but I remember that, during the college football playoff negotiation discussion, you and I talked about, this question of private equity, because that's all the rage and that's what all people are saying. And I said, no, it's not going to be private equity. It's going to be something called private capital. And lo and behold, exactly what we talked about, 2 months ago is now what's going to happen. And I think, even on Twitter, you're still seeing people using these terms very imprecisely. People who should know better, like John Wilner and some of these other journalists. But it's never ever going to be private equity because of two reasons. Number one, the universities aren't going to want it because the most important thing, literally the most important thing to any university really, but any big university especially, is preserving their tax-exempt status. There is no university president who is ever going to create a for-profit joint venture with a private equity firm. That's not going to happen. I don't care how many $2,500 an hour tax lawyers you have on retainer. No university president is going to sign off on having that kind of an arrangement and jeopardize their tax-exempt status, which is worth literally billions and billions of dollars. So that's not going to happen. And I don't think the PE firms want an ownership stake in college athletics either. For this, we talk about the playoff, that's different. But in terms of an athletic department, what happens if there's another Baylor? What happens if there's another Penn State and there's a humongous lawsuit that stems from some kind of Title IX lawsuit, or there's a discrimination claim that's brought against the athletic department because they fired a coach? Who do you think a plaintiff's lawyer is going to list as the defendant? They're going to list Redbird Capital. They're going to list Sixth Street. They're going to list whoever it is, because just like in healthcare, when a doctor commits malpractice, who does the plaintiff lawyer sue? Well, they sue the hospital, even if the hospital didn't actually leave the sponge in the patient. They do it because that's where the money is. So private equity, I don't think, is going to want to have an ownership stake in an enterprise where they're going to have enormous liability exposure, which you limit yourself if you're just in the business of basically making a loan that has creative, repayment terms, which is all private capital really is. So I don't think either side is going to be interested in outright ownership. That might be different in like a standalone entity. So yes, could there be something that looks like private equity in a MTE basketball tournament like this thing in Vegas? Could it one day be ownership stake in a G5 playoff? Yes, like those things perhaps, because that's not a university, that's not a not-for-profit institution. That's just an event that you have an ownership stake in. That's a different kettle of fish than outright ownership in an athletic department, which I don't think we're ever going to see that. So that's number one. Mm-hmm. The other point that I wanted to make here, which again I think people continue to get wrong, is, I'm bickering with people in the chat room about it. Nobody from the Big Ten or the SEC is ever going to get kicked out of those conferences. That is never, ever, ever going to happen. And the reason for that, there's many reasons, which could be an entirely standalone show. But these schools, whether it's Vanderbilt, whether it's Northwestern, where I went to school, whether it's Minnesota, or you're a fan of, it doesn't matter. Mississippi State, pick a team. None of those schools are ever going to get kicked out of either of those leagues for a lot of reasons. But they're certainly not going to get kicked out of those leagues because they lack the financial resources to compete. Every single one of those schools has the money to compete, and they will continue to spend that money. There is nobody who is looking to pocket the delta between their media rights deal and whatever the $22 million cap is going to be.
Yeah.
Every single one of them is going to spend up to the cap because that's why they're in those leagues to begin with. Like $6 million or $5 million to Northwestern or Vanderbilt, who have like two of the 12 largest endowments in the world, is nothing. They're going to spend. They want to make the money because they want to spend the money on athletics. They're not going to be penny wise and pound foolish. This is not, St. Peter's or some school in the Northeast Conference or something. Like, they're going to spend, and they're not going to get left behind for lack of spending. What I think this thing Weatherford is talking about is that there are going to be some schools in the ACC and the Big 12 who are not as well resourced as the schools that are in the Big 10 and SEC, or that are likely to be in the Big 10 and SEC. And that might be a challenge. Like, there might be a challenge for, say, Boston College that could spend if it wanted to. Cal Berkeley has spent. They're drowning in debt as a result of their spending. Those schools might reevaluate whether or not they want to actually do that because it's more or less because it's not quite aligned with their mission or what their goals are. And for many other reasons, those schools are likely never to make the Big 10 or the SEC. And so those schools may choose a different path. There may be schools in the Big 12 that just aren't going to be capable of competing or be as with the Power 2 conferences. They're not going to be as attractive to the Power 2 conferences. Maybe those are ones that decide, okay, well, we don't have the money to spend up to that cap. We're not going to, dip into our endowment or anything crazy like that. We don't have the donor base. Maybe they choose not to at that, or they simply can't compete at that level. But nobody in the Big 10 or the SEC is ever going to have that problem. And people need to just realize that if these schools were to have been kicked out of these leagues, it would have happened already. Okay, Northwestern thought they were going to get kicked out in the 1980s. They thought they were going to get kicked out when Penn State joined the league. And even then, when there were, I think, very good reasons to consider realigning what these leagues looked like at a time when those programs were not competitive at all. I mean, there's an article with Donna Shalala where she was talking when she was the the chancellor at Wisconsin, where she's like, nobody even contemplated doing that. And the reason for that is these schools, whether it's Indiana, whether it's Rutgers, whether it's Mississippi State, whether it's Northwestern, Vanderbilt, they all bring value.
Yeah.
They all bring value to these leagues. The value isn't symmetrical. It's not the same. Nobody is saying Minnesota or Northwestern has the same value as Ohio State or Michigan. Yeah. They all have value in the overall composition of the league. And I got news for you. Like this idea that like, oh, well, one day maybe no one's going to get kicked out, but the big boys will just leave and form their own thing. That's not going to happen either. Because, again, athletics is important. Football is important. It is way more important to Ohio State and to Michigan to be aligned with universities like Northwestern and Wisconsin and the rest of the Big Ten and the AAU than any football association will ever possibly be. And if you are at the top of the mountain where you already make the most money, where there's nobody who can outcompete you, which is what being in the SEC and the Big Ten enables you to do, right? There's a difference between Texas and Oklahoma leaving. The Big 12 is getting outcompeted by the SEC and the Big Ten. There's a reason for Southern Cal to do the same thing. There's a reason for these ACC schools to do the same thing. They're losing, so they need to get, like you always say, to the highest ground possible. But once you're at the highest ground, where's the incentive to leave at that point? Ohio State and Michigan aren't going to somehow not be the biggest players in the Big Ten. Alabama and Florida and Georgia are never going to have to worry about that. They're always going to have the resources relative to all of the other schools that are also competing. There is no incentive at that point to cull the field further when you're already at the top. Yeah. And the idea, so the counterpoint people say, and this is, I know I'm on a stem winder here, but this is sort of leading me to the news that's happening today. People will say, well, the media money's drying up. At a certain point, gosh, NBC or Fox or someone is going to say, well, look, Ohio State, we're going to pay the Big Ten this amount of money, whether Rutgers and Maryland and Minnesota and Northwestern are in it or not. So you guys figure out what you want to do with it. And that's when they're all going to decide to leave the rest of the guys behind. That's not going to happen either. People are, I think, assuming, right, today's price is going to be the same thing as tomorrow's price. Like the media market today, the challenges that exist in the media market today are going to exist forever. Number one, the problems in the media market that exist today are wildly overstated. If the media industry was dying, the NBA would not be doubling its media rights valuation like it's just about to do. If cable cutting, cord cutting was the end of the media industry, the WWE would get a rights cut. What are they getting? They're getting a rights increase because, number one, they're still getting a bump for the content they're keeping on over-the-air cable television on USA. But they're also getting a huge rights increase from whom? From Netflix, right? Same thing with NASCAR, getting a huge increase in their overall rights fee. And the biggest contributor to that is whom? Amazon. Like maybe the Pac-12 didn't have any leverage and they were in the wrong place at the wrong time and the streaming deals that they were getting weren't very attractive. But it was only a year before that the Amazon was willing to overpay relative to the networks to get Big Ten content, and the Big Ten didn't take it because they didn't want to take the risk on the exposure front. But the idea that there's some dwindling font of money out there that's going to basically create this opportunity to kick people out so that everyone's slice of the pie gets bigger because you're cutting the pie fewer ways, I think that's completely missing the environment. And the reason why I further believe that is because the guy who said that was also Jerry Cardinal. When he was at, I think it was either the Sloan Conference at MIT or one of the Sports Business Journal conferences, he was saying that, number one, the predicted death of ESPN is wildly exaggerated. The idea that somehow ESPN is going to go out of business because their business is being challenged in the moment is ridiculous, and they're actually an undervalued asset. And he also said that college sports as an enterprise is wildly undervalued, and it's largely undervalued because it's so fragmented. But again, the organizational units that are kind of command this consolidation are the two leagues. It's the Big Ten and the SEC. And the more brands that get consolidated around those two brands, the more strength in the market overall college sports is going to have. College basketball, wildly undervalued. Why is that? It's because Mark Emmert was an idiot and signed a way too long-term deal with Turner and CBS and didn't go back to the open market soon enough. Like, these things matter, these products matter, this content matters, and whether it's traditional broadcast companies or the streamers who are getting into this market now, the money is going to be there for premium content. And the Big Ten and the SEC are premium content. I don't think there's ever going to be a situation where somebody comes in and says, okay, well, we're going to nickel and dime the Big Ten so that they can fight out who gets the money. That's not going to happen because somebody else will be there in a competitive marketplace to say, no, don't go through all of that political nonsense. Don't deal with any of that crap. We're happy to have Big Ten content on Netflix. We'll be happy to have it on Amazon. And guess what? In 10 years, for all we know, Fox Sports might be owned by Amazon. Okay, like Comcast might get bought by Apple. Yeah. Who knows what the world is going to look like? Yeah. But there's money out there for products that command it. And even in a challenging environment that we're in today, those products like the NBA and the WWE, they're still getting paid. So I have absolutely no doubt that college sports will get paid too. You and I talked about this last week. The sort of the low ball number that the college football playoff got isn't really, I think, a function of a dying media environment. I think it's because everybody knew the NFL was going to step in and throw their weight around, and people would rather conserve their money to get that product. I don't think it's necessarily a reflection on college sports as a whole. I think the next iteration of the playoff is going to be very, very valuable because it's going to look different, and the bidders are going to be different. And if Redbird didn't think that, they wouldn't be offering the terms that they're offering now, which is not an ownership stake, which is not like a fixed repayment schedule, but it's a percentage of revenue. Well, you don't make that kind of investment unless you think their revenues overall are going to increase. How would they possibly increase? They're going to increase because the media rights values are going to continue to go up. And the last point I'm going to end on is this ridiculous thing related to all these, contraction chicken littles out there, that the ACC is somehow going to like fire Duke and fire maybe, Wake Forest and Boston College and these other smaller schools in the ACC don't find a home. But I believe, absolutely believe that Duke is going to end up in the Big Ten or the SEC when all this dust settles. And the reason for that is, number one, they are a brand multiplier. It is one of the most, not just academically prestigious universities, but it has a national following in basketball at a time when, again, college basketball is woefully undervalued. Fox wants to bid on the NCAA tournament when it comes up, when this bad deal finally comes to the open market. Fox is going to air college basketball games on Friday nights on its broadcast network once college football season ends. They're going to want to have they're going to want to have Duke games on their network if they can. So I do not believe this idea that like Duke is going to get left out or get fired or get left behind because they don't have strength in football. I don't believe that. Like, I think that their basketball value is very strong. It's just as strong, if not stronger, than what Kansas has. And I believe the reports are accurate that Kansas has a very good shot of getting into the SEC. Why wouldn't Duke? Why wouldn't Duke? They offer value. I think the same thing of Stanford, to be quite honest with you. And people say, well, gosh, how could Stanford possibly get into the Big Ten if the Big Ten wanted them when they added Oregon and Washington and Fox said no? The reason Fox said no is because they already had a contract in place and they didn't want to rip it open and renegotiate something all over again that they had just gotten cost certainty on. And they were only willing to do it for Oregon and Washington at a half price because those assets were valuable enough that it was worth that extra outlay in that moment. Just because Stanford and Duke and some of these other schools weren't heavily sought after today doesn't mean they won't be tomorrow. And I think what we're going to see is there's going to be a complete reset of what college sports looks like, and this is the dam breaking. The money is going to start coming in. Those who have the ability to pay and play at the highest level are going to be in the next iteration of what this looks like. Those schools that can't and won't are going to be left out. And it's not going to be as clean and simplistic as people think, where they say, okay, well, some small private school that's not good enough at football is going to get left out. That's not how the university presidents evaluate the value that these schools have. And I don't think it's, all things being equal, the way that the networks are going to evaluate this either. And when you've got a new product coming to the market and the market's going to look a lot different 5 years from now than it is today, people just need to chill a little bit, okay, and think that the schools that they conventionally believe aren't as good as theirs, right? Oh, Texas Tech is going to get left out. Why should Vanderbilt be in? Well, I'm sorry, like that's just how it's going to work out in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of wish casting in the Big 12 and in the ACC. But I really think people need to chill, understand that like this is an evolving process, and like eventually capital is going to find its way in an efficient market to places where it can generate the biggest return. And like there are schools out there that are people are going to dismiss out of hand that are going to end up winners. I guarantee you on this. And I think everything that we've seen so far in the last 2 weeks to 2 months is validating that. I think I feel pretty good about it. So anyway,
Alrighty.
long rant, but I wanted to get it all out because I see all this stuff on the internet and it drives me crazy.
Got it.
So I'd hope to just offer a contrarian perspective for a change.
And you did a fantastic job. Thanks for the call, Chris Kenny. Please call again, sir.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Appreciate your indulgence.
Yeah.
Bye.
There is a lot there that I agreed with. Chris Kenny went through a long laundry list, and I agree with a lot of it. It brought up some interesting other points that I haven't hit upon yet. NBA is about to sign their deal with ESPN, with Amazon, and with NBC. So that's going to take Warner Brothers Discovery out of the mix. It looks like the WBD, Warner Brothers Discovery, is out of the NBA. That means TNT, TBS. And we know that Warner Brothers Discovery has signed this streaming platform deal with ESPN and Fox. So the question is, does Warner Brothers Discovery get back into college football in the next couple of years when these new deals come open? They used to show college football. They used to have college football as part of their portfolio decades ago is TNT, TBS, so they're going to get back into the college football landscape. That could be the possibility. A lot of great comments by Chris Kenny. I want to get to some super chats. Carrie Ruby, how does SMU share much without any ACC TV revenue? Great question. It's probably going to go on to their big boosters once again. It's going to be difficult. Look, I get it. Florida State, right? Great collectives. Big boosters. But they're trying to get to the SEC and the Big Ten because they're only going to double dip so many times before they say we can't give any more. So that's why Florida State is trying to get to the higher ground. They're trying to get that media money that the Big Ten and the SEC gets. SMU, sure, they're gonna rely on their boosters for the next 10 years. But it does get to the point where, even the boosters start saying, I'm not going to dip back into my wallet. The SMU big boosters are going to have to fund the salary cap because they're not going to grab any ACC TV revenue. So that's how SMU is going to do it. Hopefully SMU is going to be able to match what the other ACC athletic departments are going to do when it comes to their salary caps, to their salary payroll, so to speak. We shall see. Thank you for your generosity, Eric Ruby. I do appreciate the super chat helping us keep the lights on. And then we got Rock and Rant, Mr. Hurricane. I still need somebody to show me how future athletes are going to be bound by any of this without the collective bargaining or congressional action. I don't think anyone is going to be able to show you that. In this settlement deal, according to reports from Ross Dellinger and Pete Thamel, there is this thought that yes, we might have to go into collective bargaining with the student athletes to protect ourselves from future lawsuits. It is sort of written in the settlement. I mean, it's been part of the reporting. And of course, they're trying to get the congressional action for some antitrust protection. So I don't think anyone is going to be able to show you that, Rock and Rant. And I do agree with you. It's out. This settlement, while it's going to happen officially this week, it rests on the knife's edge in regards to, is it going to solve all the issues? Right now, it doesn't. Because right now, Congress is not having a carve out for college sports. Not right now. It hasn't happened. And collective bargaining agreement isn't going to be starting with this settlement deal. But one of those two things have to happen. Thank you for the super chat, Rock and Rant. Thank you for your generosity to college football's peek around the corner, helping us keep the lights on, helping us be able to do these live shows every single day. I told the little general this morning, I said, little general, and that's what I call her in the house. That's what I call her in the restaurants. That's what I call her when we're going shopping. I say, the little general. I said to her, this is going to be one live show this morning, PATC breakfast. But we're probably going to have to come on live again later on today. And she said, yep, I understand. So make sure you subscribe to our channel, open up the notifications, turn them on, so when we go live again, you'll be able to get notified that we are going to go on live. And also follow us at Flug Empire on X. We give everybody a little bit of a notification that we're about to go live. Back to the comments. Phone lines are open. 763-260-1333. D5 Terps, man, Flugs is nimble. I can't keep up. D5 Terps, Mr. Terrapin, you are the very first person that has ever said the fat guy from Minnesota is nimble. But I do appreciate it. I do appreciate it. Back and forth, back and forth. The elbows are flying in the chat room. Holy smokes. Give us a call, 763-260-1333. Some people disagree with the caller, Chris Kenny. Some people agree. Some people agree with some of it. The Big Lubbock, the Big Ten, and the SEC doesn't offer enough inventory. That is why the networks will keep the Big 12 in the mix. I'm going to go back here. Hold on one moment. I'm getting a few different reports. Big South Sports. Big South Sports Commissioner Sharika Montgomery says she and the league support this settlement, but has concerns about the disproportionate impact those damages will have on the Big South Conference and member institutions. She says she's hopeful we can continue to work through the alternative models of who pays. But the Big South is going to be in support of the settlement. I think we all can come to the conclusion that the settlement is going to happen by the end of the week. Okay. I guess we're going to close down the live show. We've been on the air for over 2 hours. I want to thank everybody joining us for our PATC Breakfast live show. And like I just said a few minutes ago, this is probably going to be the first of 2 live shows today. We expect other different breaking news going to be happening. We did not plan on this live show. But when Ross Dellinger reported the couple interviews that Yahoo Sports had with Drew Weatherford, we had to come on live because this is going to happen. Private capital is coming in to the college football world and the college sports landscape. So buckle up, brace for impact. Who's going to do it? Who's not going to do it? We shall see. But I think we're going to be hearing reports about it real soon after the settlement becomes official. So I want to thank everybody who's joined us for PATC Breakfast. All the donations, thank you so very much for your generosity. Without those donations, we cannot come on live every single day and sometimes twice a day like I believe we're going to do today. So thank you for the generous donations, the comments in the comments section, and the great phone calls that we got. Buckle up, brace for impact, keep your head on a swivel. Because I believe PATC will be coming on live again today. This is a big week as you all know, in college sports. A massive week when it comes to college football. Direct payment from the university to the student athletes is going to happen, and it's going to happen in time for the next college football season 2025. The implications, the ramifications, it's going to be in your EA football video game in 2025. Salary cap, money, I think it's going to be all transparent, above board. You and I are going to be arguing that the Iowa Hawkeyes pay too much money for their punter. And of course, the Hawkeye fans are going to be saying, are you crazy? Are you crazy? It's worth paying that money to get the top punter out of the 2026 high school class. We're going to be having major discussions all over the place. The new world is upon us. And I cannot get my arms around the whole thing. The implications, the ripple effects is going to be massive. So thank you for joining us. We're going to cover this story and everything else that's going on in college football in the days, weeks, months ahead as we head on towards, which I think is going to be the most fascinating, interesting, drama-filled college football season we've ever seen. A college football expanded playoffs, a democratization, access into the college football playoffs. Holy smokes. We're in for a lot of drama, a lot of fun, and a lot of heartbreak. Let me tell you that. A lot of heartbreak. Until next time, from all of us at College Football's Peek Around the Corner to all of you, please, 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 you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.